Westeros!
And welcome to our Morning Throners podcast.
I'm Nelson.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Kyle. And we're the fucking Morning Throners.
And welcome back to another episode of your favorite Song of Ice and Fire podcast. We're your Morning Throners, and we got a new POV on deck. Jaime won. Storm of Swords.
Hold that excitement, man. Like, I thought this one was hot garbage. Like, I don't know. I like the way you feel about Cat. I think this is the first I felt that about anybody where I'm like, man, I don't want to read any more of these.
I mean, to be fair, I cheated and listened and didn't read. If I had to read it, I'm trying to count how many pages now. I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it if I had to read, but I listened to it on my way home, so it wasn't bad at all. The guy I was reading, goofy-ass voice for Brienne, or listening to, goofy-ass voice, I don't know if it's a very good chapter either. I don't think it's great.
I think Jaime's just a huge piece of shit.
I think it's just cool that we get a new POV. I'm a fan of new POV. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Kyle answered the question I was going to ask was like, did you not like it because he's a piece of shit or because it was boring?
No, he's just garbage.
I think he's a piece of shit in this chapter, and it's boring as fuck.
The way I kind of think about it is kind of like a Theon, like just a piece of shit person, but mixed with like a little bit of the funniness of Tyrion. Where he does make you laugh, like with some of his he's being a dick with whatever he says, but it still makes you chuckle. At least makes me chuckle.
Boring. It was basically calling Brienne a wench for 10 pages. Had to be 10 pages of that, and then a
12
chase.
pages or something like that.
She starts it though. She calls him Kingslayer first. He calls her my lady, probably sarcastically, but he says my lady.
He's just a huge piece of shit right from the beginning.
He is, but she starts it with a name calling out.
I want to say that I've never felt this way about a Theon chapter though.
Again, Theon has a little bit more of that, like we see where he's coming from. Maybe not at first, but like pretty quickly.
Jaime's a cocksucker, even in his own mind. He's a cocksucker.
Yeah. Well, it's like, what do we know about him? He threw a kid out a window,
and he
killed his own king, right?
Protect.
Like betrayed all his vows, fucks his sister,
and his son is he has a son with his sister, at least one kid, probably three.
Biggest asshole we know.
All right, let's set the scene. Did you know he was going to be? What did you think when you saw Jaime, Kyle? Did you think like he'd be being freed right now, or still in the cell?
I thought we were gonna get some in jail scenes rather.
Interesting.
I definitely didn't think he was gonna be like being broken out, freed,
right,
by Cat, especially. We went through this. I didn't think he was dead, but
kind of. I was gonna ask it at the end, but like since we're on it, like next chapter's Cat, we'll see like kind of things from her side of things.
It will be cool because we know that River Run has obviously sounded the alarm on it. So
yeah, all we really heard of it from that point of view is when Jaime at one point says or Cleo says tell him that Cat freed us, like it was lawful. Like what he says back is like, Cat's not in charge. Is basically what Robin Ryger responds back.
Yeah. All right. So they're drifting down the river. It's Jaime who's in chains, hand chains or manacles, that's what they're calling it.
Fetters.
Hand and feet chains. And then Brienne is in charge of this escape, and cousin Cleos Frey is along for the ride.
So real quick, let's get back on it. I've had some time. My class is over. I haven't completely figured out the timeline, but I figured this one out. Whispering Wood was 8 months ago. So Jaime's been locked up for 8 months. To be fair, though, for the first 4 months, he was in being treated well in a tower cell until Tyrion. Remember when Tyrion sends Cleos Frey back with terms? Yeah, they have the thief, the mummer, whatever, right? So he was in a tower cell for about 4 months, and then he was in the dungeon that we saw. Not a good place for the last 4 months. So he kind of talks about this chapter he can't even stand up at one point. That's from that.
Yeah, I mean he's been sitting in the cell. He was chained to be bent over, right? He wasn't standing. I mean if he did stand, he would
he even mentioned he couldn't even stretch.
Yeah, he mentions pretty quick here I fell asleep right away. As soon as they put him in the boat, he fell asleep because it was the first time he was actually able to lay down in 4 months.
You just imagine, I'm sure they fed him enough to keep him alive, right? But how much muscle, he mentions how his face is shrunken and his hands and everything, how much muscle just deteriorated off his body is probably crazy.
From not moving, not moving at all.
It's also just kind of funny how he's still it's kind of have you guys seen that the Deadpool movie?
No.
The first one probably.
There's a part where basically he's getting tortured before he's becomes Deadpool, right? And he like just keeps making jokes at the guys who are like torturing him or like experimenting on him. Maybe it's not torture, they're experimenting. And they're like, he's like, nothing can kill my sense of humor. And like the one torture guy's like, I will. And like, just like, it's kind of one of those where like you'd expect him to come out of that situation like not making jokes at everything. But Deadpool, even after he goes through all that shit, he's still like the most jokey superhero. Jamie just spent 4 months, 8 months in captivity. 4 months he couldn't even lay down.
Yeah, so it didn't change him.
Again, maybe not long term it would change him. Like I would expect him making jokes in like maybe like a week from now. But he's like he can't even. He's still so sore he can't even stand up, and he's already just like poking fun at people.
He's right back to Jamie.
Yeah, exactly.
He's decently mentally tough to know like what party he's playing for the Lannisters in this deal. One, he knew he was probably pretty safe because they wouldn't have just killed him because he was a good bargaining chip. So he knew he wasn't probably in any real danger. And he's probably just like, I would say he's built a little bit different. Like he knows how good of, like he's still trying to fight people and he hasn't held a sword in 8 months. Like, so he's still probably pretty confident and cocky and just, you know, mentally like, whatever, like I'm stronger than these people, but.
Except at the end, though, when he helps Brienne, he like in his mind he's like telling himself he's about to hit her and be on his own and free. But then he helped her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it did kind of. I guess he did show a little side to him there, right? Small redeeming factor.
She did just save his ass, so it could have been a little quid pro quo. Like, okay, you got me, I got you back this time.
Yeah.
Like, not like, oh, we're cool now, but like, because you're right, that does like stick out of the chapter. Like, what the fuck? He should have smacked her in the face.
So, how much of this do we want to dive into? Like, the beginning ride is, he's chained up. Brienne and Cleos are rowing, and Brienne's just being a boss, like rowing through the night, never tired. Talks about
he doesn't know anything about her,
right?
And he's constantly asking to be freed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was about to say, like, at the beginning, he doesn't know anything about her. He assumes she's lowborn by, like, just the look of her. But clearly she was educated by her speech, so he knows she's highborn. And he, like, kind of, I don't know if it's right at the beginning, but he calls her on it, like, you have to be highborn, says my lady. Pretty early on, he thinks back about, like, the escape. We said about it, like, he fell asleep as soon as he got in. And Kat, like, had to yell, like, open, we're sending Cleos back with terms. We kind of hear that that's why Cleos is with them, is like Jamie thinks about it kind of here maybe throughout the chapter. Kat doesn't trust me at all. She's kind of trusting in Cleos and Tyrion to hold their end of their bargain in this thing.
Yeah. You know what else is weird? Like we get into the cat, like what cat, you just brought it up. So the cat like vows to keep her promise and whatnot. Why Cleos? Like what's keeping Cleos? And then her threat at the end is like, I'll kill you. Do you know what I mean? Like Kat says, like, you better keep your vows or I'm going to kill you. Like at that point, she's still not near them. They're already at war.
He seems super afraid, right? So he's kind of just like falling in line, I think.
Yeah.
I don't feel like he's a strong-willed person. He's just being yelled at by these people and like, so he has his word he's going to follow.
What do you mean?
That's the read I get on Cleos. I don't know. He's weak, he seems.
Oh, Cleos. Well, again, what I was thinking about Cleos is he's the one that's being sent back and forth with terms, right? So it kind of makes sense that if we are sending back terms, send it with Cleos.
Well, I mean, he's just like scared. He's like stuck in the middle. He doesn't want to like, you know, offend either side. Like, I feel like that's why she trusts him to continue doing this.
For sure. But well, I guess what I'm saying is he's the one who told Kat like what Tyrion said. I was there in the throne room. This was a few Kat chapters ago. He was like, she gets him drunk so that she can learn about Sansa and Arya. And he's like, I saw Sansa in the throne room, but Tyrion promised with his lips that if Jaime was returned, the girls would be returned. And we were kind of talking like, was that its own thing? Or was that like rolled in with all the rest of the terms? We kind of said like, that seemed like it was rolled in with everything else. Like Rob goes home, we get Jaime back, you get the girls back. But the way Kat took it definitely in that chapter was, oh, we can say fuck all those other terms, and as long as Jaime goes back, we'll get the girls back. That's like its own thing. And I think she's using Cleos here to kind of like, okay, Cleos, remember when you get back there, you better elbow Tyrion. Remember what you said. I was there. I heard it. Like Cleos is the guy who can be like, I heard you say this, Tyrion. Jaime can't, Brienne can't say that. That's my take on why.
The weird part about that take right there is that if Tyrion ended up saying like, Well, it wasn't just a 1-for-1 trade. Like, there's other terms to be met. Like, thanks for giving us Jamie, but no, I decline. You know, like I already has him. So
100%.
Yeah. Kind of it's kind of funny. It's not funny. This is current events. We just had a little prisoner exchange in real life.
That's true. Yeah. I don't know much about that, so I'll comment on it.
I don't either.
Nothing like commenting from ignorance, eh?
Yeah, so let's just skip by that one then.
I mean, it happened.
Let's just say that there's exchanges made all the time that not everybody agrees with.
Well, the two people that were in charge obviously agreed on it.
Yeah.
in the real world situation.
Yeah, in the real world situation.
All right, let's get back on track.
So again, just like some of the funny jokes when they're going back and forth with the names, and she's like Kingslayer, and he's like wench. She's like, do you deny that you slew a king? And he's like, do you deny your sex? Just like wench means whore, right? Not just woman.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Wench just doesn't mean you're a lady. Like wench means you're like, isn't it like nasty kind of like?
But to Jamie,
all of them, yeah, they're all the same. It's definitely a derogatory term, and that's the point. Jamie's a dickhead.
Yeah,
which is also why Brienne doesn't like the name. Just like Jamie doesn't like Kingslayer.
And with the wench, then he was like, oh, well, prove to me. Are you not a wench? Then it's like, oh, well, prove to me you're not a girl. And he was like, oh, well, actually, you don't have any tits. Like, maybe it wouldn't help.
Cleos is like, come on, Jamie. Yeah, Cleo's like,
Brienne,
Jamie, come on.
If Brienne wasn't pretty, like, fair as she's a protector, I don't even know what her title would be.
Hard to it's hard to get her to angry, you're saying?
level-headed.
I'm just saying, like, she's not a knight, right? Technically, she's not knighted.
You're right. It's weird because she was in the Kingsguard, which is like normally knights, but she's kind of like in the same like as the Hound was to Joffrey. He was in the Kingsguard, but not a knight. She was like that to Renly. So I don't think
I guess she doesn't have like honor to like a knight's honor, but she's pretty like she could be just beating the shit out of him. Like he's chained up. Like she could just go over there, punch him in the nose, and then
exactly.
Like knock him out a couple times.
She definitely holds the knight's honor in like high regard, and like she's serving Cat. I mean, that's really what this chapter is 100% about. Like,
yeah.
And there's even like a little glimmer. I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but when she sees the women in the trees, she's like, "No true knights would do that." And I'm like, "Okay, shut up, Sansa. Grow up." That's like that's what I think when Brienne says that. Like, you're being like Sansa
for sure.
Now.
Grow up. This is war.
And Jamie is like the Hound there. He's like, true knights do this every time they go to war. They see worse than this, and they do worse than this every time.
It's just not written about in the songs.
Yeah. That's Sansa always says that the true knight thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get a little bit of Cleos's background. Like I don't know if we've gotten this before. Like whose kid he was.
Nothing I like more than a new Frey for the notes. We got Walder Rivers
tree.
Last time, the bastard who sentenced Chet, and now we got Emmon Frey.
There you go.
He's Walder's second son. He's like
it's high up there.
He would have been second in line if Walder's first son wasn't 70 already. So with like a whole family tree of his own. So he's the second son behind a huge family tree of his own. So he's like, I think he's literally like ninth in line or something. Yeah.
Right. So he's got great grandchildren in front of him.
Exactly. Yeah. He's like ninth in line, I think.
So Emmon married Lannister lady.
Jenna.
Yep.
Tywin's sister.
And Cleos's dad was soft and went with the Lannister side, right? Like he didn't want to be a Frey? Or was he just so far down the line he was like, fuck it, I'll go be a Lannister?
Well, Jamie says that ever since they got married, he lived in fear of Tywin, of his wife's brother. And then when the Freys chose sides in the war, he chose to go with his wife instead of his father, meaning exactly what you said. He chose Lannister instead of Frey. Jamie makes it seem like because he was kind of a pussy and he was afraid of what would have happened otherwise.
Which is another reason why I was saying that about Cleos. Like the same idea where he's...
Apple doesn't fall far.
Yeah, he's just... terrified right now.
I don't have the quote, but I think when Jamie describes him, he's like strong as a goose.
No, you have the quote here. I'm reading it. Sir Cleos looked like a weasel, fought like a goose, and had the courage of an especially brave you.
Female
Is
goat.
that a llama?
It's a sheep.
Female sheep. Goat and a sheep are pretty much the same thing though.
Game of Thrones animal.
Yeah,
it's Game of Thrones animal.
I read that and I was like, somebody's gonna say this. I'm like, this podcast, these people are idiots. Somebody's going to say that.
Funny thing we jumped over there is when he's talking about like which side Cleos, I guess, landed on. And he's like, Emmon Frey took his wife's side instead of his father's. And he's like, the Lannisters got the worst of that deal. And again, like that's something you might not catch on the first side because like unless you're actually understanding who he's talking about here, you could just be like, oh, we lost them and they weren't on our side. But no, he's saying we're worse off for having this family, which is just, again, Jamie being, he doesn't even say that out loud. He's just like being a dickhead in his own head.
Yeah. Another just thing to mention about Cleo is like why he gets called like a goose and whatnot. Like he's just like, Jamie, please stop making fun of her. Like, where's your honor? Like he's just kind of acting like a little, I mean, Jamie's acting awful and Cleo's just like, stop it.
Well, there's a part, we might not be quite there, but there's a part where Jamie's like, is Cleos really this dumb? Or is he just trying to like suck, like brown nose me and like is he a lickspittle? Like, is he a mutton head or a lickspittle? I think is what Jamie says. And then Cleos like says something like no one who ever believes in honor could possibly think Jamie would throw a child from a window. And Jamie's like, okay, he's a lickspittle. Like he's just sucking up to me.
He's kissing my ass.
Yeah, like clearly I would do that. Everyone knows I would do that. So yeah, it's just like to Jeff's point. He's kind of dumb and kind of stupid, but he's also just like sucking up to Jamie here.
Blah, blah, blah. Something about Brienne's sword. What's going on here?
No, it's talking about in the cell.
Yeah.
And Cat had Brienne's sword to his stomach.
Yeah. Swear that you will never again take up arms against Stark nor this was kind of what you were talking about at the beginning, Kyle, with like she just rattles off all this shit that he's gonna make him do, and he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Swear that you will never again take up arms against Stark nor Tully. Swear that you will compel your brother to honor his pledge to return my daughter safe and unharmed. Swear on your honor as a knight, on your honor as a Lannister, on your honor as a sworn brother of the Kingsguard. Swear it by your sister's life and your father's, and your son's, by the old gods and the new, and I'll send you back to your sister. Refuse, and I'll have your blood. He remembered the prick of the steel through his rags as she twisted the point of the sword. So kind of like you guys both said this, like she just rattles off a bunch of shit, and then basically, to Jeff's point, doesn't give him a choice. Like either this or die. Not necessarily, but that's the implication. And then Jamie's funny comment there. He's like, I wonder what the High Septon would think about an oath sworn in this manner. Drunk, sword point.
Yeah. He's like, I don't care what that fat boy thinks of.
That dude's dead anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that the dead guy?
He probably thinks of the guy that was eating in the parade.
Yeah, I don't know if that. Yeah, I guess it started off kind of as a parade for Marcella. Also, the thing that I was thinking about, like, we finally have someone to like learn history from again, like firsthand, right? Like Tyrion was, I guess, like he's kind of younger, so he was around and he like gives us history from books. But Jamie was like in King's Landing during a lot of important shit
at the sack.
Okay, so you mean like current history, kind of
like ever since Ned died. Like Ned was alive during a lot of that shit too, and he would remember back to like, oh, I remember when this thing happened. I remember when this thing happened. Since then, we've been mostly in the kids' heads, besides Tyrion, really, and Kat a little bit. But she wasn't really in the midst of it.
Yeah.
Jamie shaves his head. I don't know where we're at exactly chronologically, but Jamie shaves his head. As
I think we're
not
pretty
there
close.
yet. I think he says something to himself, but he says it out loud. Perhaps she's not so stupid after all, because it's basically like Kat putting her trust in Tyrion for being a more honorable guy, I think is what the point was.
Exactly. She's not trusting me. She's trusting him.
And Brienne gets pissed off, like, I'm not stupid.
So, yeah, this is kind of where he actually learns who she is. I'm from Tarth. My father was the Lord.
It's beautiful there.
Yeah. Jamie's like, how did you end up with Robb then? Like, isn't that just a rock in the middle of nowhere?
And aren't you a Baratheon server? Is it in the Storm? Was it Stormlands? Yeah,
exactly. You should be sworn to Storm's End. And she's like, I don't serve Robb. I serve Kat. And she delivered me to take you to Tyrion, and that's what I'm going to do.
Now shut up.
And she's like, well, I've had enough silence. I want to talk. She's like, talk to Cleos then. I don't want to talk to you. I have no words for monsters. And Jamie laughs like, are there monsters somewhere under the water, in the bushes? Like, come on. And she says, a man who would violate his own sister, murder his king, and fling an innocent child to his death deserves no other name. Jamie thinks Bran's not that innocent here. But I think it's
come on, that was his hiding spot, not yours, Jamie.
It's ridiculous that Jamie is trying to like pretend that he had like was in like. How are you trying to say you're in the right here? You threw a kid out of a window because he saw you fucking your sister.
And the only thing he's upset about is that the only thing he's upset about is that it didn't kill him. He's like, oh, I gotta like deal with it now. It didn't die.
Yeah, exactly. Like what? Yeah. Well,
and then somebody tried to have him killed. Yeah, he was mad about the whole situation. Like you said, no remorse.
So Kyle, do you think that was interesting? Like him talking about the assassin?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely kind of the first insight we got from him, piecing a little bit more of it together, that he is claiming no involvement. especially to himself. Like, so I think that's saying something. It's not like in conversation he's denying
Exactly.
it. This is like his thought. So
yeah, I guess like where were we with that? I feel like that's something we haven't thought about in forever. Is like who was behind that, right? Because like
I think the last I assumed was that Jamie had done it, but I don't know.
Yeah, because like that's kind of it was a big thing in the first book because like that's the whole like Tyrion got arrested, taken to the Vale because he was the one who did it.
Because what Kat said, was it Tyrion? Because it was Tyrion's blade, right?
It was his dagger.
And then in the beginning of Clash of Kings, there's a few scenes where like Littlefinger is like wearing the dagger to meet with Tyrion. And he's like, oh, this thing? I don't know what this is. And like Littlefinger's like almost fucking with Tyrion with it. But then Littlefinger just fucks off for the whole second book. So we really probably haven't thought about this since then.
Yeah, you're definitely right.
Yeah, so
I mean, I guess now I'm kind of more back towards Littlefinger because I don't know.
But Littlefinger wasn't even there. That's the crazy thing about Littlefinger for like the how could he have done the dagger? He wasn't there.
Well, he could have sent the dagger.
But how could he like Bran wasn't paralyzed when like they left King's, you know what I mean? Like because I'll say people have like theoried about this and like that's one of the big things with Littlefinger because there are a lot of signs that point to Littlefinger having at least some involvement with it. He at least capitalized on some aspect after the fact, which I guess is why people think something to do in front of the fact. But the big question is he wasn't there. I guess if they're there long enough for Ravens to go back and forth.
That's what I'm saying. You think word didn't go?
But if then, like, is he sending the like a Raven's not carrying the dagger?
But yeah,
so like
Ravens.
He sent the dagger beforehand, and then just in case some, you know what I mean? Like there's questions to it, but just something to keep in mind.
He also just mentions how the trip up north was pretty bad because they weren't able to sneak off until this time. The one time they do sneak off, they get caught.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to, like, in his head, it's like, oh, woe is me, I couldn't fuck my own sister. Like, this was so horrible.
I leave the actual wenches to Tyrion. I just wait for my sister to come home.
He talks as if he's, like, better than people for that. Like, he said something to Kat about that in the last Kat chapter, too. Like, I'm more honorable than Ned was. Like, I've only ever been with Cersei.
Yeah.
Like, Daddy's got a bastard boy.
What about your husband?
Yeah. So it's like he finds like some weird, his own like sense of honor in this like, I'm faithful to my sister thing, which I don't know, to each their own, I guess, but
it's really strange.
All right, so he comes at Brienne a little bit more, calling her a lady or a sir, and she's just uncomfortable. Like I'm surprised she just doesn't go over there with her mailed hand probably and just punch him in the nose, like. Couple good shots, put him back to sleep. Like every time he wakes up, bam, just punch him again. Like you can deliver him with a broken nose.
Yeah, exactly.
Just brain damage every 10 minutes or whatever.
And you're far enough that like you probably could just like get away with it for 2 weeks and then just like stop punching him the last week and he'd be fine by the time you got there.
Just gag him. Take off your sock.
Yeah.
Roll it up. Whatever you got. Take off your undergarments. Put it in his mouth. Wrap it around his mouth, and there you go.
She's clearly a rookie in the prisoner transfer game.
She's got no clue. Got no clue how. I was just getting annoyed.
Jeff's got all the ideas, though.
Yeah, Jeff's experience in the prisoner transfer game.
He would have been calling me a wench all day. I'll tell you that.
So he calls her out and says you can fancy up a dairy cow and Crinnet and Chamfron, but you can't ride her into battle, which again, kind of a funny analogy. But again, we've seen Brienne like in action twice. She popped off in the tourney when Kat was first showing up, and again, tourney. She'd
mess Jamie up for sure.
Especially now, I don't know. Jamie's like one of the best
alpha,
yeah, in the kingdom. Like even from people who aren't Jamie saying that. So I don't know. It'd be a good fight.
Yeah, I mean, she took, 4 guys on in the tent after Renly's death?
True. Loras is really good, too, and she beat Loras in that tournament, so she should be up there. But
we'll see. So, just more shit about, like, how did the rest of the girls look on Tarth? And whatever. She's like, it's a great spot.
I mean, it sounds pretty sweet.
Cleos again tries to calm him down. Don't fight, guys.
Well, this is when he starts kissing his ass that you were talking about before. He says that the Starks can't hope to defeat you with swords, Jamie. So now they make war with these evil words. And he's like, well, they fucking they did beat me with a sword,
you idiot.
you moron. Like, that's why I'm here. And like, and then that's when, like you said,
and he talks about his honor too.
Anyone that would believes he would harm a child.
And to your point, Jeff, she does threaten to gag him here. She tells him it's called the Sapphire Isle and that she'll gag him if he doesn't shut up. When she's like,
just do it. Just do it. What are you waiting for? I must have missed that.
The chapter would be a lot less boring if she did that. That's why probably why she didn't.
Yeah, he was kind of needed in the conversation for sure.
You know what always pisses me off in movies? When people get gagged with like a thin strip of cloth that like just like kind of does this. Like
you could 100% talk through it. Yeah.
You could easily like at least scream through it. Like maybe you can't move your tongue as much, but a scream would
like it'd be uncomfortable, but yeah, you could talk, you could make some noise. So then Jamie has this like recollection back to like right after he pushed, maybe not right after, because it seems like Cersei wasn't really mad about it until Bran was going to live. Then she was like, why would you do that? You're an idiot. Yeah. Like, because like it took like a day. Like, it took like till Tyrion showed up the next day till they knew.
Yeah, they're probably on the how often was Ned getting updates on Bran? Did he? Do you remember?
I think the Tyrion chapter in Winterfell, he comes to see Jamie and Cersei. He's like, oh, I just heard from like the Maester that he's probably gonna
live, right? They're at breakfast and they're still there.
And they exchange like a weird look, and Tyrion like.
So probably they have a conversation shortly after that. They're still in Winterfell.
Exactly, but what I'm saying is like. It's been like a day-ish at least. So Cersei was like okay with it for a day, because what Jamie says here is she was mad when the boy lived or something like that, right? Not when he pushed him. Yeah,
I don't think. I mean, it would have been easy if he died falling. Like everybody knew he climbed crazy height. He fell from that tower. Like, all right, he fell. He died falling.
But what's kind of, again, everything about Jamie is weird. But what's weirdest here is once they get into this argument, it just like they go into like angry fight sex. Yeah. Where like she's yelling at him and he just like starts like kissing her, and it just becomes okay eventually.
Then he just
transitions pretty quick. Yeah.
Bodice off.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, okay. And then the Stark boy had been forgotten. So it just like seems like Cersei was okay with it too. Like, or maybe just for him.
Insulation on the walls and stuff to be doing this, like either like a really good hiding spot or some really honorable guards.
It's funny, like don't they say like I feel like in medieval times, even in like Game of Thrones books, they'll say like, oh, like if somebody like handsome dies, they'll be like, the women were tearing their dresses to pieces in Highgarden or whatever, right? Isn't that like an expression, like the women were tearing their dresses to pieces? Like what does Cersei tell Robert here? Like she comes back and like her dress is just like ripped open because where Jamie like pulled her boobs out, like, oh, another dress ruined, ripped right down the front. So weird. This is the fifth this week.
Why are your boobs hanging out coming back from your brother's room?
It's like Cersei's got a special seamstress. Cersei's got a special seamstress.
What's the implication? Yeah.
All right, and then that's when he thinks about did Cersei actually send him to the assassin? Because why wouldn't she just have killed him? But.
Jamie's like, I would have done it. And I think Kat asked him about this. Like, did you send the assassin? And he said no. And what Kat was thinking was like, wow, he's been like surprisingly honest about everything up till now. Why would he lie about this? And like kind of to your point, Kyle, now we're in his head. We know he wasn't really lying. He didn't. If Cersei was behind it, he didn't know.
Well, at least that's what he's telling himself. But yeah, I mean, this point makes sense though. Is like, why would Cersei send anybody other than him?
He already knew about it. Why involve somebody?
Because now there's this other idiot involved, and then now their plans out in the open.
We talked about a couple podcasts.
So
the less people involved, the better. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So now they got the sail going. They're cruising along. Jamie gets shaved up. Not his beard, but his head.
Opposite. He went the opposite direction.
Well, again, it's because he's known for what he tells Cleos, right? Is I'm known for.
Yeah, he's known for his hair and clean face, and now he's got no hair and shaggy face.
And he says like when he looks in the reflection, he doesn't even recognize himself. He looks like 5 years older. I think Jeff was saying earlier, his face just looks kind of like drawn. He lost some weight.
Mm-hmm.
Gaunt.
He's got lice.
Does he have lice? Did he say he has lice?
Yes, for sure.
Also, what really bugs me, and I don't know why it bugs me, but after they cut his hair off, they have Cleos wet the knife. W-H-E-T. Why is wet spelled with an H in it like that?
Is that like sharpen the knife? Does it mean that, like, when you use a whetstone, isn't that W-H-E-T?
Yes.
I don't know. I thought he might just, like, dunk it in the river to get it, like, a nice clean shave. I hope you guys are right.
Whetstone.
I think a whetstone is W-H-E-T.
You're right,
yeah.
Jeff.
It's probably a Game of Thrones word.
It is.
Yeah. It is a
100%
Game of Thrones
is.
word? Okay.
So he probably was like, all right, take off my big locks with your dull knife, fine. And then
sharpen that bitch up before you get to my head. Gotcha.
Yeah, once you're getting to the skin.
Yep. So he talks about how they don't really see anything, villages, but no villagers. They saw a girl watering a horse and a dozen peasants digging in the mud, doing peasant stuff.
I mean, this is just them painting the picture that, like, the war is everywhere, and
yeah, exactly.
So pretty much they come up on this tree is where this
burning
ends,
in,
right?
With a big tree. Yep. Burnt down in, pretty much gone.
Yeah. It's a structure fire and a tree with a whole bunch of ladies hanging from it. Brienne is having none of it because her honor is, more important. And this is where the whole True Knight thing comes in. She definitely holds this, even though she's not a knight, she holds their beliefs to herself. Like she's holding herself to these beliefs, rather. So she climbs a tree. Her and Jamie have this whole thing. Like, they're like, we got to get going. And she's like, no, we can't leave this. Turns out that it was the Starks, or at least the North, that did it.
Exactly. They lay with lions was the sign that was around one of the ladies' necks.
Do you think that was confirmed or just assumed? Like, lions were like, Lannister men were like staying there. And it's just
all three of these people are like, okay, yeah, it was definitely.
They were actually wenches.
I mean, Cleos even says, like, oh, yeah, like, I was with them when they did that. I was with all these women when they fucked all the lions. It was the lions who were bringing me back from King's Landing back to Riverrun. Cleos doesn't spell it out that plainly, but that's kind of what he says.
Do you think Cleos stopped in and dropped a stag or two?
He might have. I don't know, like, exactly what, like, how high class he was traveling, because he's kind of like half a prisoner and all that. But I was thinking about that too, Jeff.
Well, I did skip a Jamie overestimating himself again, where he said, I'll climb up the tree and cut him down. just to unchain me. This is just the whole time, the whole way through, he's like pretty much trying to think of ways to get out or get a knife or whatever. And this was another one.
And I don't know if he actually thinks she's going to go for it. He's more just like, I took it as him just like fucking with her. Like, oh, if you just take these chains off, I'll do it. Yeah. And she's like, oh my God, shut the fuck up. Yeah.
You can let me free. I'll climb.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The whole time he was coming up with new plans to weasel his way out.
Yeah. So when they talk about who could have actually done it, Jamie says that they're on Bracken land and Tywin burnt Lord Janos Bracken's castle. So he doesn't like the Lannisters. So it might have been him. Cleo said it might have been Sir Mark Piper, who also doesn't like the Lannisters. He was one of the guys who came to see Ned in King's Landing in that first book when Ned was on the throne. And he's like, Gregor Clegane fucked up all my shit. That was Mark Piper, so he probably doesn't like the Lannisters either. And then they say Lord Beric Dondarrion, who we know about him. He's been fucking with the Lannisters in this area for a long time. But Cleo says he only hurts knights. So he throws in that it also could have been Roos's men.
He's the ex-Kingsguard, right?
He was the guy that Ned sent out on the mission.
After Mark Piper, he's like, you and like 50 guys go and bring Sir Gregor to justice.
Barristan Selmy is the guy's name I was thinking of.
Yeah, that's the old Kingsguard.
Yeah, he's still missing. So yeah, this is where Jamie again just learned some of this. He didn't know anything about Roose. He thought Roose was gone and beaten. Cleo tells him now he's actually okay. He came back. Jamie's like, that's not good, because that means if he's at Harrenhal, there's no way we're getting
King's Landing floating down this river.
Exactly. We got to go right past there.
But they stopped to cut down these bodies, right?
Yeah. Well, they're already there when they're having this conversation. When Cleo and him is having this conversation, and Jamie's more like, okay, yeah, we definitely can't do this. Like, what are you thinking? And I think he says like, oh, take me to my father instead of King's Landing, and this will all be like a lot faster. And she's like, no, that's not the deal. Like, I'm coming back with the girls or not at all.
Yeah, the girls are in King's Landing. I have to go to King's Landing.
Oh, and there's one part here where Brienne's like, Jamie's like, oh, the roads will be watched. And she's like, well, anybody who's got to get to you has to go through me. And Jamie's like, well, that won't be that hard. And she's like, what do you mean? I was a member of Renly's Rainbow Guard. And he's like, the Rainbow Guard? You and 6 other girls, was it? A singer once said that all maids are fair and silk, but he never met you. So again, Jamie is like, to Kyle's point, I kind of want to see him go at it right now. Because like, I think right now it would be pretty well matched.
He's not making a good first impression in terms of chapters, You
don't got to be a good guy to be a fun read.
We've proven that.
It just wasn't super fun.
I think he's funny, even if he's a dickhead. So she goes up the tree.
I don't know if funny is the word, but
she goes up the tree, starts cutting down bodies, and then she sees the sail. So she's like, fuck it, back to the boat.
Oh, shit. Get in the boat. It's funny because this sail is, they're chasing their own sails.
Exactly, yep.
You wouldn't do that in Sea of Thieves.
It happens sometimes if people just choose the same cosmetics. So they're just running. They're not really gaining any speed. They think they are for a little bit, but they're not. The way it's bending, it's hard to tell. Jaime thinks that Tyrion would be able to think of something clever here, which Brienne ends up thinking of something clever. But all Jaime can think of is to run at him with a sword.
I got a little bit, once we get there, I got a little bit of what's going on with Brienne and this. We also talk about the size of the ships in this boulder for what's going on. Because it sounds like this river galleon or river galley is pretty decently sized if 18 people are rowing on it.
Yeah.
And then this one boulder destroys it.
I mean, any hole in the hull is going to send it down, and it's game over.
Jeff ain't buying
You don't need to destroy it. You need one hole in the hull. It's kind of like what we were talking about in the battle with in King's Landing. One Volkswagen-sized boulder through a ship's done. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's Fury.
Okay. All right. Brienne pushed this thing off a cliff.
It was teetering, and she might have levered it with a stick.
Come on. Come on.
It's like the thing when a grandma has to pick up a car to save a baby, and you just get the adrenaline strength.
She wasn't saving a baby.
She's she's serving her vow. She's getting Jaime to King's Landing, and that's what I mean to do, right? That's how the chapter ends. She's like, I'm gonna fucking do it, and Jaime's like, okay, wow, you actually fucking mean this.
All right.
So you're right. It is a little unbelievable, but
they're basically getting chased. They're getting caught up to. A little bit of Archer getting shot at. Jaime's taunting him back, which is kind of crazy. Like at this point, we know that they want Jaime to be alive, right? They don't want to kill him, but they're just loosing arrows at him. Like, what if somebody fucked around and killed him?
I thought the same thing. They're shooting arrows at him.
An arrow's not lethal though.
What?
One arrow
on a guy that has no armor? It's going right through his heart. What are you talking about?
If it hits his heart, he's dead. Or if it hits his head, he's dead. But anywhere else, he's probably okay.
He's already almost dead. He's
not okay, but you live.
Okay.
My man's been chained up for 8 months. He's
how many times in movies do people just get shot by arrows and just it literally doesn't even matter? Like Rambo just pulls it out, puts some gunpowder in there, light that thing on fire. Good to go.
I'm saying all right, but okay, let's just talk real show quick, Nels. One person was told not to go into battle because one arrow could kill them.
Sure. But also in the show, when Yoren dies, he gets shot by a crossbow and then says, I always hated crossbows, took too long to load. And then he goes and kills 2 or 3 people before he gets shot by the next crossbow. And I think he gets shot by 2 or 3 more before he actually dies. And I'm thinking of something in Lord of the Rings, which is even crazier than that, which I'm sure Kyle can think of, but I can't say because Jeff hasn't seen Lord of the Rings. But boat, you can live through a bow and arrow. You
can also die.
Sure.
So it's stupid that they're just shooting shit at him. It's stupid.
Their whole main objective is to bring him back alive.
I think Jaime instigates it too, right? They don't shoot until Jaime says he says throw your sword in the water, and Jaime's like, if I had a sword, I'd stab it through your belly and cut the balls off those 4 cowards next to you, talking about the archers. And then that's when they shoot. They weren't shooting, I don't think, at all before that.
Flight of arrows answered him.
Yeah. So it's he pushes the again, I don't know. I think Jaime's funny. He pushes who says that in a situation like this? To your point, these guys are pointing bow and arrows at you. This is no situation to call them cowards when you're chained without a sword. But it's kind of funny when he's talking to Cleos. He's like, there's 18 of them, probably more like 25. Say it's 18, that's 6 apiece. He's like, I would take 8, but these bracelets are going to slow me down.
Dude, he's super confident in himself. He can't even stand. He can't even walk. He can't even
He's
walk.
He's not confident.
Adrenaline.
Well,
dude, he's still saying he's going to kill 8 of them.
He said he could take
6
8
of them.
Yeah, okay. He is confident.
He can't even walk right now.
You know what I'm getting to. Cleo says, we don't stand a chance. And Jaime says, I don't care. That's not the point. I'm not afraid to die. And then in his head, he thinks, I'm serious. I don't give a fuck if I die. I was never afraid to die.
I wanted, as long as I die with the sword in my hand.
Exactly. So again, like it's kind of like a weird thing to think. Like I feel like I can't think like that. Like fuck no. Like if you give me an option between life or dying in a fight, yeah, I'll take life. 99.9% of the time.
I think that's pretty easy compromise.
Yeah.
So this is when she starts steering them towards the what was it? The fork, the left fork in the river.
Mm-hmm.
Around this island, and it's like the more treacherous path, so she knows the other boat's gonna have to go on the right fork, and she gives Jamie the tiller, right, or the oar, keep them off the rocks.
The boat follows them in the narrow. So I took it as, you're right, it's more treacherous, but I took it as more treacherous because it's narrower. It says like the right path is bigger, and I think the point of that is like it's narrower to kind of Jeff's things like this. There is some unrealisticness.
It's kind of windy, right?
Yeah. There is some unrealisticness here, but I think like, oh, we're going down a narrow part of the river, so they have to be near this 20-foot bluff
The
that
rock.
Brienne's going to push this rock off. Like they can't be. Like,
And she just happened.
it is a wide ass river.
What if there was no big boulder on that rock? They would have just floated down,
could have seen it
weaving in
ahead.
and out. It's basically like when you imagine like this is like an old like visual saying like the right fork is the straight path, and then the left path is like windy and treacherous, but it ends up at your goal. Like the right path isn't always the easiest path. Basically, Brienne took the.
To whichever one you said
one.
it, the left path is also windy in some respect because after all this shit, she somehow cuts across the land to like meet the river faster up. So there is some
Get back in
winding
front of
here.
them. Yeah.
The thing is, I think, what does he say? It's a cow-sized boulder is I think what they say. That's ridiculous. No person will be able to push a cow-sized boulder. It's a cow-sized
That's
boulder.
what I said. That's
Like,
literally what I said.
But like at half that size, if it's in a precarious spot, I could move it. And Brienne is like not my size, but close.
You're
probably.
basically Brienne.
She's close.
I'd bet she's stronger than you.
For sure. But I'll be compared to Brienne all day long.
Brienne would fuck him up.
For sure.
I know.
So is there anything else? The one thing I was going to say is there's a few times here, I think twice, Jamie notices like Brienne's eyes. Like the one point she's like determined. Like she's not afraid. She's determined or something like that. And he thinks
determined,
she has
not
eyes.
desperate.
Mm-hmm. He does compliment her eyes. She does. I mean, to be fair, doesn't she have like nice blue eyes?
I think that's the
Have we
one
heard
thing
about her
Kat
eyes?
said too. Is like that's her like one good feature. Yeah.
Push the rock off the cliff, cracks in half, smashes through the boat, sinks the boat. Those guys got a long walk back to River Run.
Yeah. Well, right before that, right? This is when Robin, Ryger, and Jamie are talking about single combat. And he's like, we can do single combat. And Robin's like, I was not born this morning, Lannister. And Jamie's like, but you're like to die this afternoon. And then that's when he's like, all right. And again, this is when he starts to command the second, arrow volley, right? And that's also when the boulder comes. But it's like, he always commands the arrows after Jamie says some bullshit.
Yeah, go kill our best hostage. Fuck it.
But as they pulled on their longbows, a rain of pebbles cascaded down around them. Small stones rattled on their deck, bounced off their helms, and made splashes on both sides of the bow. Those who had wits enough to understand raised their eyes just as a boulder the size of a cow detached itself from the top of the bluff. Sir Robin shouted in dismay. The stone tumbled through the air, struck the face of the cliff, cracked in two, and smashed down on them. The larger piece snapped the mast, tore through the sail, sent two of the archers flying into the river, and crushed the leg of a rower as he bent over his oar. The rapidity with which the galley began to fill with water suggested that the smaller fragment had punched right through her hull. The oarsmen's screams echoed off the bluff, while the archers flailed wildly in the current. From the way they were splashing, neither man could swim. Jamie laughed. Again, this kind of just gives me images of Blackwater, like from Davos's perspective. Right? I feel like there was a paragraph. Like I could have read that paragraph pretty much and put it in the Blackwater, and it would have made sense with like the way boulders and shit were falling there.
Yeah,
For
but
sure.
Davos
Yeah.
wasn't laughing. Davos was like looked on in
SUV-sized
horror.
boulders.
Exactly.
Don't you remember Brienne just picking up a boulder in the Blackwater and tossing it like a shot put onto a boat?
They call those the three sisters. Brienne's just the fourth sister, right? Those catapults were called. And maybe they were the three whores because they were going to live
True.
the lusty welcome. Maybe not the sisters. Brienne's the fourth whore. Just flinging stones.
Wench. Anyway, so Jamie's looking at the boat go down, and he's like, well, shit, she just made my escape for me. Like, she's off the boat. I'm free. Like, we'll get these chains off, and we're good.
Yeah.
And then, like we were talking about, she shows back up, jumps in the water, starts to swim to the boat, and he's like, well, all I got to do is hit her with this oar, and I'm still free.
Me and
But then he
Cleos
helped her
back
out.
to landing.
Yep. Instead, he found himself stretching the oar out over the water. And he thinks she's even uglier wet. And then he tells her she's stupid. He tells her they could have left her and says, like, I expect you want to thank you now for not leaving you. And she's like, I don't want none of your thanks, Kingslayer. I swore an oath to bring you safe to King's Landing, and you actually mean to keep it. Jaime gave her his brightest smile. Now there's a wonder. So yeah, Jaime, kind of like what you were saying at the beginning, Kyle. Like, Kat's just like, oh, here's all these vows. After we literally just had this whole Cat chapter talking about how you don't give a fuck about vows. And Jaime, whether sarcastically or not, here is surprised that Brienne is very determined to keep her vow. Kind of to your point, being the true knight that she isn't. Out of all the people that we've seen be
the
knights.
exact opposite.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's the nature of her not being a knight, right? Like maybe that's what kind of pushes them over the edge to where they
want what you can't have.
Power corrupts kind of thing.
Yeah, there you go.
She hasn't been corrupted, you're saying?
Yeah, because she's not a knight. Maybe there were some other ones like her. Maybe that's part of why she's still this way, is what I'm trying to say.
The best knights are actually not knights.
That was deep.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of relates to one other person that we know, right? I mean, there's no confirmation, but Dunk, we talked about this in the first Dunk and Egg book. There was a lot of hints that, like, he says he's a knight, but, like, oh, he got knighted by a dead man who no one saw, and, like, his ears get red when anybody asks him about if he's a knight. It's like, he's, again, we don't see too much of him, but he's, like, helping the small people. There's the part that, like, there's even memes online sometimes of, like, whatever that paragraph is where Dunk gets his shield for free, and all the small folk are lined up to, like, see him go. And Dunk's like, why are they here for me? I'm nobody. And Steely Pate is like, you're a knight who remembered his vows. Right. So he's like, but again, Dunk's like one of the people who we think probably isn't not a knight.
I'm not an actual knight. I'm a fake knight.
Kind of your point, like the not knights are the real knights.
I gotcha. I picked up what you're putting down, just like Brienne picked up an SUV-sized boulder and pushed it over.
Put it down on Sir Robin Ryger. All right, that's all I got. Kyle, you got anything else? First Jaime chapter?
I mean,
he's an asshole for sure.
He's
a fun asshole. Sorry, I cut you off after I asked you a question.
Yeah, I don't know. He wasn't super fun the first time. Hopefully it gets more fun. Like I said, that was probably the most abrasive chapter so far.
Yeah.
I imagine we're going to see more of this down this river. I don't have much specifics, but
all right.
As for the future for these two, right? Like I don't think it's going to be like, oh, they made it through the one thing that was going to stop them.
Fuck Cleos. Cleos is here too. These two. Come on. Nobody gives a fuck about Cleos.
I mean, I don't think anybody cares about Cleos. I think he's just there.
I care about Cleos. I love my phrase, but I know you.
Phrase are your
right.
You're basically a Frey.
Yeah.
well, I mean, I just love the family trees, and they got the biggest one, so. All right, well, we'll see Kyle in the next one for Catelyn 1: A Storm of Swords. And we'll see the rest of you guys in the spoiler section.
Bye.
All right, later, nerds.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
See you later, Kyle. Thanks for hanging out on Jaime 1, even though you didn't like him, and he's one of the best characters ever written in all fantasy.
Wow. You're just throwing it out there early.
I texted you something right before we started the podcast as more of a reminder to myself. And I don't even think I did a good job.
You told me pretend like we don't like Jaime.
Yeah, we got to remember to pretend like we don't like Jaime. Exactly.
And I'm so far removed, I don't remember if I like Jaime or not. Like, I feel like
some people don't.
I feel like the last thing I remember is him, like, passing out in the hot tub. Like, does he even do anything? Like, he gets his hand chopped off and we feel bad for him, but, like, what does he do that we like him?
So, I've seen there's like about a lot of debate. I don't want to say debate, but it's an interesting question that I've heard like I've heard people talk about on other podcasts. Like most people do think Jaime has a pretty good redemption by the end of where we're at in the books, especially in the show. Same thing. But like one of the big questions is what causes the redemption? Is it the loss of his hand that makes him realize like, oh fuck, I can't be a knight by fighting. Now I got to be a knight by being a true knight. Like we always talk about true knight. Or is it Brienne that he like
his
learns from example? Well, just learns from example. Like kind of right here, like Kyle said at the end, it doesn't make sense. Why does he save her? And the only thing I can think of is like, she just like showed to him, like, I'm not a knight. I'm nothing. I'm some wench. And look at me.
I mean, the only thing
caring about my oaths more than you care about your oaths. And he respects that to some extent. There's a part in a Jaime chapter later on where he says he always dreamed that he was going to be Sir Arthur Dane. But he turned out to be the Smiling Knight, who is like kind of like a Beric Dondarrion type figure from before Robert's Rebellion. Like when Jaime was just like an early Kingsguard, there was this like group of outlaws who were running around the Kingswood called the Kingswood Brotherhood. They were led by the Smiling Knight, who was one of the most fearsome but also gallant knights at the same time. But he was also an outlaw, like robbing and stealing and potentially raping people.
Going on.
And Jaime always thinks that he wanted to be Sir Arthur Dane. I think Sir Arthur Dane and the Smiling Knight had this epic duel where they fought so much. And then because Arthur Dane had Dawn, the Smiling Knight's sword literally was like all dinted to the point where he says like, where Arthur Dane let him get a new sword. That's how Jaime, I think, says it. Is like, he's like, get a new sword. It's not fair at this point. And he lets him get a new sword. And then the Smiling Knight says, I want that magic sword of yours. And then Arthur says, and then you'll have it. And then Jaime says, and then he made an end of it or something like that, and just like ends up killing him. But Jaime says, I always thought I was going to be Arthur Dane, and I ended up at somewhere along the line, I became the Smiling Knight, became that dickhead who was just like selfish and.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't remember. I mean, they get captured at some point. He gets his hand chopped off. Like that ends the book, right? Like does that end this book?
That's the third chapter in this book. There's a long way to go. Tywin dies. He makes it back to King's Landing. He lets Tyrion free. He tells Tyrion, right? Like, there's a really important.
But then Tyrion hates him, right? Like,
because there's a really important part in the last Cat chapter where he's drunk and he kind of just spits it out, and it's like a throwaway line. I don't know if we talked about it, but I was rereading some of that chapter because first off, that conversation was awesome. But what he says is, it's funny that I'm hated for so many by my greatest act, and loved by one for my worst act, right? Everyone hates me for my best act, and I'm hated by one for my worst act. And the thought on what he's talking about there is everyone hates me, even though I saved all their fucking lives by killing Ares. And Tyrion loves me.
Tyrion loves me because I bought him a whore.
Well, because he thinks because I lied to him. Tysha wasn't a whore; she was real, and Tywin made me tell him she was a whore. So his worst act was lying to Tyrion. In order to, I guess he kind of thinks he's saving Tyrion, maybe. I don't know, like by not telling him the truth that, hey, your actual wife who actually loved you just got raped by all these people. So again, there's so much complicated stuff going on with Jaime that we don't learn about. Does it resolve him from throwing Bran out a window? No. He's clearly fucked up. But like I said with Theon, what makes Theon so interesting is like the conflict. There's so much interesting shit going on inside his head. Right now, we've only seen the shitty part of Jaime.
We're gonna see into more of the conflict.
Yeah, exactly.
He starts to think like Brienne's like cute and shit too, right?
Yeah, I think there's a thing in psychology, like if you like spend time with somebody or are in a relationship with somebody, you'll find them more attractive over time.
Right.
What I thought weird, just kind of jumping totally off the Jaime topic because I'm sure we're going to come back to it. Something that I caught weird about this read: Brienne's eyes are blue. They always talk about her eyes are blue. It's like the one thing about her that like is actually pretty and gets mentioned.
Yeah.
That's like one other thing in this book. Blue eyes. So really like they're
like
big
a White
defining.
Walker?
Yeah, and I'm wondering is she white? She's definitely dead, gonna come back white for sure. She's big time.
And it's just her same blue eyes.
Same blue eyes, exactly. And Jaime sees her all in armor and can only see her eyes and actually thinks it's still Brienne. Something I don't know. I could see something like that being cool.
Nah, that's pretty far. That's pretty far fetched.
Pretty far fetched, but it could be cool. It's just weird how and maybe I'm just reading into it, but like the blue eyes thing is really all I'm going.
So the one thing I wanted to hit on, which is kind of along the same lines, because we know Kat's fate, right? And I don't know if Kyle does.
I don't think so. He says he knows that there's something called the Red Wedding, but I think that's all he knows. He doesn't know who's involved or anything.
So
and what's great is real quick on that is I thought it would be a dead giveaway, like, oh, obviously a wedding's coming up. This is going to be the Red Wedding. But in this book, we have Sansa and Tyrion's wedding, which is like a thing that's awaited and then happens.
There's 3 weddings.
And Joffrey's wedding happens in this book too. He dies in this book. Like that's in season 4, but that's in book 3.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So the part at the end of the vows where she's like, if you don't keep your vows, I'm coming for blood. Is that what it says?
It's either you do this or blood. But the thing is, I don't think he's broken any of those vows. right? He specifically makes a point, like when he's fucking with Edmure, he says some horrible shit. I'll send your baby to you in a catapult.
Yeah.
But he does that so that he doesn't have to charge the walls. He thinks to himself, we have a bigger army. We could just charge the walls.
Yeah.
And I could get back to Cersei in a second. But I don't want to like throw away my vow to Cat. He like is thinking that shit to himself way later
but let's
on.
think about Kat's mindset right now as Lady Stoneheart.
She doesn't give a fuck about
She
that.
doesn't give a fuck, nor does
Where
she
are my
know
daughters?
about any of the vows, right? Like,
Yeah.
she knows she was killed, probably because the Lannisters played a big part in it.
Yeah.
And she never got her daughters back. So she's actually coming for blood. She's killing everybody.
On the whole vows thing, this is something that George like acknowledges that is like it's like a paradox, and I think there's a Preston Jacobs video where he calls this the Jaime dilemma, and I had the quote in this
I
chapter,
saw
but it's
that
from the
in your
Cat one.
notes, yeah.
Right? How can you
Yeah.
still count yourself a knight when you have forsaken every vow you ever swore? Jaime reached for the flag and refill his cup. So many vows, they make you swear and swear. Defend the king, obey the king, keep his secrets, do his bidding, your life for his. But obey your father, love your sister, protect the innocent, defend the weak. Respect the gods. Obey the laws. It's too much. No matter what you do, you're forsaking one vow or the other. And maybe I don't have the whole quote here, but in the show, when he says this line, he says, what if your father hates the king? And he literally gives like actual examples from his life that make it be like, this vow says obey your father. This one says obey the king. What if your father hates the king? You're fucked. You're forsaking one vow or the other. I don't know if he actually gives the example in the book, but in the show he does. And that was one of the things, like, I have those quotes in my notes sometimes where I'm like, is this a spoiler? And when we got to it, I'm like, I think it would have been too much of a spoiler on the I like Jaime side.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sticking up for him too much already.
Yeah, you definitely.
I tried to see, like, I was only sticking up for him because he was funny.
You hit it pretty well, I think. You're fine. I mean, you stick up for Theon all the time, and he's literally like a asshole. So
I guess one other thing I'll say about Brienne, just before we get digging into anything else, is one of the reasons I love Brienne is she's just girl Dunk, and she's a descendant of Dunk. George has confirmed it when people ask him about it. He's like, "Come on, yeah, obviously I've given you guys so many hits. That's a clear one."
So where's the Dunk in the Dunk obviously wasn't the person of Sapphire Island, so
she at one point she goes into Harrenhal, I think, and she sees a shield that. Or no, so she gets a shield.
Went's shield, right?
Yep. So I think she's actually walking around with a Lawston shield, who was the family before Went. And there's a knight that calls her out on it, like, "Hey, you're walking around with a family that's like they were traitors and they all fucking died for it." I don't know if exactly I don't remember the history of the Lawsons off my head, but I'm pretty sure she gets called out for it early in Feast for Crows by a random hedge knight. So what she does when she's in Maidenpool is she's like, "I need to get this shield repainted, so I'm getting called out for it." So she remembers this shield that she had seen in the dungeons at Tarth, an old shield that she had seen in the dungeons, and what it was a sunset with an elm tree and a shooting star on it, right? So Dunk was at Tarth, right? So we don't know.
She mentions that.
Yeah, so she has to get her shield repainted because people are calling her out, like, "Hey, you're carrying a traitor shield," and it's the scene out of like when you read Brienne chapters in Feast of Crows, it's like reading short Dunk and Egg books. A lot of people don't like them because they're so unrelated to anything else happening in the rest of the book. But like when you look at them, like, oh, this is just like a Dunk and Egg novel. It is, because it's her and Pod just going around doing Dunk and Egg shit, and Pod's not like the same type of character as Egg.
Pod's the worst.
But you get those vibes. She's with Dick Crab for a while, who's like all chatty like Egg is. Like, I don't know. I'm a big Brienne
I'll never
fan.
like Pod no matter what because of how much you hyped him up during the show. He was the worst.
What do you mean? Pod's not even that cool in the show.
You loved him in the show.
Right. So on the Dunk talk, I kind of gave a little hint to it. Just randomly, we're talking about how it's funny how Brienne's throwing rocks off the cliff. Do you know what I'm talking about? When they in the second Dunk and Egg book, they recruit all these peasants, but they're all named Watt. There's literally like 9 people named Watt. So they decide they have to name these peasants with like, so they can just they call them like they start calling some of them.
I remember they fight in the river. Don't they fight in the river?
Dunk ends up fighting in the river, but I'm talking about before that. They're like training the peasants because they're gonna go to war.
Right. There's like one tower, right? They have one tower that they're defending.
Tower, right? So they call all their peasants, and there's like 13 of fighting age, and like 9 of them are named Watt, right? So they have to come up with names for some of them, and so they call them by like where they're from, like or by what they grow. So they call like some barley corn, and they call some like melon or whatever. But like there's 2 Watts from the place that they both grow melons, but the one when Sir Benniston Brown says like, "Did any of you guys have any fighting experience?" Or like, "Are you good with the bow and arrow?" One's like, "I'm good at throwing stones." And Ben is like, "We got a right trebuchet over here. We'll call you Treb." So they just call him Treb because he claims to be good at throwing stones. So
I remember that.
You just kept memeing about Brienne throwing the big ass stone off and made me think of good old Treb from Duncan Egg 2.
Just throwing a SUV off her back.
Just people with like funny nicknames. Treb, Alfred Joffrey. These are the people that stick with me.
Yeah, there. Alfred Joffrey is a good one. I didn't read it, so I probably glazed over like anything deep in this chapter.
Yeah. So one thing is I kind of said it in the first one. She calls him Kingslayer before he calls her wench. Mm-hmm. He literally calls her my lady. And again, knowing Jamie, the way I read that, it's a very sarcastic.
I'm sure it was sarcastic. Absolutely.
But still,
I feel like Kingslayer is so. I mean, maybe it's said behind his back more than to his face. Like people, like he said, people don't say it to my face often, but I know they all call me that in closed doors.
And he respects her for that.
But if you think about Brienne and her honor and how much she cares about being honorful, like he probably did the worst thing imaginable, right? So
yeah,
that probably hits home a lot deeper to her than just somebody that's calling him Kingslayer just to get a dig. Like nobody else really cared about Aerys, but Brienne cared about the vow made to Aerys. That's
a good point. Like most people just say it like as a joke to be funny. She's saying it because she actually thinks that he is a disgrace and a disrespect to everything that she holds sacred and can't be because of her gender and all this other shit, right? She can never do that. And he's just throwing it away and treating it like it's nothing. Yeah, I 100% agree. We were kind of talking about how there was a Sansa Hound parallel between like Brienne and Jamie, Sansa Hound. But also there's the part where when Brienne, for the second or third time, says, "Don't call me wench, my name's Brienne," she said, "Dogged as a hound." Is literally like the way that's the words in the text. She said, "My name's Brienne." She said, "Dogged as a hound," right? Which makes you think of the hound. They're both huge.
Doesn't he compare her to the hound too?
When we're talking about true knights, Jamie says she's the hound with teats if she had any teats to speak of. And when we're talking about true knights, right? That's the hound thing. He's like,
the hound, he's not a knight. Brienne are the two, right? And that's what I said. Really, we only know them two. The two truest knights are not knights. I guess like Barristan.
I used the Dunk example, but I was thinking Sandor for sure.
Yeah.
There. Wait,
you said Dunk. I guess Barristan would be one of the true knights that I think is pretty knightly.
So yeah, we could probably go down a long rabbit hole on this, and this is some stuff where maybe like after all said and done, we could talk to probably Kyle about for a while. But like, there's the whole it's on top of my head because I've read the last Cat chapter. There's a part there where Jamie, again, he's drunk and he's talking about how Brandon and Rickard died. And he's like, and I stood at the base of the throne and listened to their screams and thought about Cersei. And when it was done, Sir Gerald Hightower came up to me begrudgingly and said, "You swore an oath to defend the king, not judge him. And all men agree Gerald Hightower was a better knight than me." Right? So he's basically saying, like, this guy just watched him murder two people. And looked at me funny because I didn't keep a straight face through it. Yeah. Like, and he's a good knight. Like, where's the standards at? So to your point, like, Barristan is a great knight. I think Barristan was probably in that room, right next to Sir Gerald Hightower, not making a face.
Maybe. Yeah, sure. I'm sure he was. I'm sure Barristan has some skeletons in his closet.
And it's a thing, like, what would Brienne do? What does Brienne do in that room? What does Brienne do if she's the one that has to kill Aerys? So I heard another really interesting theory, right? So where we're at with Brienne and Jamie is Lady Stoneheart is about to hang Brienne and Pod because Brienne won't agree to go kill Jamie. And part of the reason that they think Brienne is in cahoots with Jamie is because she has Oathkeeper, which again is one of the huge things that redeems Jamie is he gives away a priceless sword to Brienne just because he thinks she deserves it and names it Oathkeeper. He named it Oathkeeper before he gives it to her. So then also it's cool. She's rocking around. She has the Dunk shield and that sword, just an absolute goat combo. And it's actually Ned's old sword and Lawson was Kat's maiden's. So it's her mom's shield and her dad's sword, but there's a lot of shit there. So where we're at, they were going to hang him and Brienne basically, we don't know why, but at the end she says a word. Right, that's how Feast of Crows ends. Is Brienne's about to be hung. because she won't turn on Jaime. She's like, you either hang or you say something. There's like a word they told her to say, and we'll cut you down, and you have to go bring back Jaime. And she's like, I'm not going to do it. And then she looks at Podrick, and then she says a word, and that's the end of the chapter.
Right.
Everyone thinks that she's like, yeah, cut me down, I'll do it. And then in Dance of Dragons, we get a Jaime chapter, and we don't see Brienne, but somebody comes up, like one of his squires, I think, comes up and says, hey, there's a huge lady in the woods that says she needs you, but you have to come alone. Like, and he's like, should we just fuck her up? And Jaime's like, no, I'll go. And I think that's the end of the Jaime chapter. Right? So where these two are at right now is Brienne is taking Jaime back to Lady Stoneheart. And a lot of people think this is going to be somehow work into be the Brienne's Ares moment. Right? Where she has to forsake a vow. Forsake the vow for Catelyn to save Jaime, or kill Jaime in order to save the vow for Catelyn, right? And Brienne is going to be put in that situation where it's impossible to keep all your oaths. A lot of people think that's going to happen right here. Taking
too many oaths. Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like, you even just think she is so quick to just swear to any oath. At some point, she's going to have conflicting interests.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
I guess we're there.
Yeah, but again, to the whole thing, it's just like, yeah, Jaime made a lot of fucked up choices, but like the Bran thing, most people in that situation would not have pushed the child out the window. But in some of the situations, like, what do you do if you're the one that has to kill your king who you swore to defend, or let the entire city burn? Like, what do you, in some of those situations, did Jaime make the wrong choice?
And he was telling him to kill his dad too. Make it even a little bit more personal. Like, forget about the whole like city aspect of it all, but like, go kill your dad. It's basically like the same conflict that, like, oh, Kat, Brienne, go kill your best friend, probably, or like, a guy she probably cares about the most. So there's just stuff.
One of the things I was gonna say, I was actually gonna wonder if Kyle's gonna pick up on this, because I don't think it's quite a spoiler, but I have it in my spoiler notes. Is Tyrion's not in charge? Tywin has already taken over. Right. So say Cleos, Jaime, and Brienne show up today. Walking. Say they show up today. Yeah. What happens? Does Tywin be like, okay, yeah, we're going to honor what Tyrion said? No, he's going to be
absolutely
like,
not. They're going to do exactly what I said. And be like, actually, we turned down your qualifying offer, and we're going to keep Jaime. Thank you.
Which is, I'm sure I'm going to do a lot of defending of Kat in the next chapter, because next chapter she's just on the fucking hot seat. Everyone's pissed at her for letting Jaime go. And I'm probably going to do a lot of defending, like, oh, she thought Bran and Rickon were dead. I'm sure I'm going to say a lot of the stuff. One thing that Kat is just really dumb about is things change so fast in this world, right? You can't assume that Tyrion's going to be in charge. And if you have to assume it's going to take at least 2 months, right?
Yeah. Do they know, the trip down south, do they know that Tywin ended up going to Blackwater?
Yeah, they do. And they have to
Kat
know
knows that.
Yeah, but does she know he was hand? I don't know, but probably, right? So she has to be thinking some of this stuff. Like, she could be thinking some of it, I guess.
Even if even if Tyrion was still named Hand and Tywin was in King's Landing,
just there,
you come on. He's like, he's not allowing anything without his approval.
Yeah, if Tywin's in King's Landing, doesn't matter who's the Hand, he's the Hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's everything I have. Last one is, again, this is one of the things where I don't know what it means. It might have something to do with, if anything, the Brienne is the other that I was going for, or maybe if you want to look into some Nisa stuff. But it's one of those things where we bring up every time Dawn is mentioned when it helps us, when we think it's for a cool theory. Here, I don't know what it's for, but it seems like a very poetic moment. It's the very beginning of the chapter.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
An east wind blew through his tangled hair, as soft and fragrant as Cersei's fingers. He could hear birds singing and feel the river moving beneath the boat as the sweep of the oars sent them towards the pale pink dawn. After so long in darkness, the world was so sweet that Jaime Lannister felt dizzy. I'm alive and drunk with sunlight. A laugh burst from his lips, sudden as a quail flushed from cover. So, the oars sent him toward the pale pink dawn. If we're talking about dawn as a sword, pale pink.
Yeah.
Like, pale pink. Like, what is pale pink? I'm thinking, like, if Nisa, is Jaime gonna kill Brienne? She's an other, and he stabs her, and then he's Azor Ahai.
Is Jaime the prince that was promised? I don't know.
I'm sure there's theories for that.
There's also a sweet in that line as well.
Exactly. So. The very next line. The world was so sweet that Jaime Lannister felt dizzy. I'm alive.
Maybe Cersei. Maybe Cersei is Nisa, and she has to stab Jamie.
Oh, we didn't mention it. The other. Yeah, I don't know why that made me think about it. He cuts off his hair, right? This kind of happened. This is the third time this kind of happened so far. Arya and Dany both happened to them at the very end of the first book, and then from then they haven't really done it yet. Dany, not really. She's on her badass turn. Arya has made a turn for the badass, right? She's been on a journey since then. It's kind of like
Jamie,
I think there's like
Jamie goes from badass to wimp.
He goes from dickhead to on
Good
the way
guy.
to redemption. Yeah, that's like a biblical thing, right? Like Samson lost his hair.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
All right. Let's sign her off.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, God.
I forgot. I had notes that I wanted to bring up in the last one, the prologue, 2 short ones.
All right.
I forgot to mention Small Paul. They say Small Paul thick as a castle wall. Someone calls Small Paul
just
thick as a
like
castle
Dunk.
wall. He's Dunk. I don't know if he's related to Dunk, but he's a symbol, like a parallel to Dunk too. Love him.
No, he's done. He's basically done.
In that Chet chapter, they talk about how Bastard Walter Rivers was the one that sentenced him. They talk about how he's leechy, right? Doing all this he's dealing with leeches, right? So we got Frey's, Bolton's, and at the very end of the chapter, when he's sneaking up on Sam, he's like, "Oh, right before I kill him, I'm gonna whisper in his ear, Chet sends his regards" or something like that. It's like again, the 3 things make me think of Red Wedding.
In their regard.
It makes me think of Red Wedding. We're setting up Frey's and Bolton's at the same time, and then ending with the
And mutiny.
betrayal. I don't know. Maybe that's nothing, but they don't mention I don't think they mention many houses, and they mention the Boltons. They don't mention the Boltons, but you got the I think Chet says, "Oh, if I were to have a banner, it would be a pale pink field with leeches on it." And the Boltons banner is a pale pink field with a dead body on it, and Roose is known for his leeches. So,
well, there's your pale pink for this opening scene.
Roose is
Dawn to pale pink.
Roose is Nisa, or the person that was promised.
Roose is actually
I don't know.
Shara Dane's
I'm sure I've
brother.
mentioned it to you. I don't think we've ever gone down it because I don't think I've ever really truly researched it. But there's some crazy theories that Roose is like a vampire who's been alive. There's theories that he's like the Night King. Roose is the Night King. I think there's theories about that too.
Yeah, whatever. We'll get in that another time.
Yeah, not for today. We'll see you guys in the next one
All
for Cat 1 of Storm of Swords. Thanks for listening, everyone.